classical sounding lick on the D minor, you know, and then something on the G7 as well, kind of classical sounding. You know, so. Bach. Oh boy, this is a big one. So I've been working on the E major partita. I have it memorized. I'm not sure if I can play it yet. I can play it, but I'm not sure if I can play it with a camera. But anyway, I've been kind of breaking it down to see what's going on, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that's actually worth studying. If you just learn the piece, then you're kind of just memorizing, you know, notes. But there's actually a lot. This is probably the most packed full of useful lines. And the first thing I did is just take some of the major stuff, because it's in E major, but a lot of the really cool stuff is in minor. When he switches to, you know, he does a lot of really cool minor lines. They're very useful, be useful in jazz, and be useful in neoclassical type, Ingve type stuff. It's just so melodic that, I mean, you can't help but improve your melodic thinking when you learn this stuff. But the first thing, so the crux of the song is he's changing keys a lot. So he's, you know, he's only in E major for a brief period, and then he switches to E7, which is going to pull the A, or he has E7 pull the C sharp 7, which then pulls the F sharp minor or G sharp minor. There's a lot of movement. But I just, for starters, I isolated the E major stuff, or stuff that's in just pure major. So, because a lot of modern music is just, you know, over a vamp, or an E major, or you can transpose it to any major key. Like, whenever you have a major chord, I've heard teachers say that people have the most trouble with playing over major chords. You know, what to play over a major 7 or just a straight major Ionian tonality. So these are some nice lines. There's not a ton of them that are, but I just moved them into the key of E major. And of course, so example 1, the whole intro is E, of course, E major. This is just an arpeggio or approach note on the E into a pivot lick where he's pivoting on the 5. So example 1 is just a pivot on the 5, and you could also do that off the B over E. And then example 2 is a scale run that he does. Starts on the E, does that, and then gets to the octave E. Very melodic. Instead of just, running up the scale, he's got this really... Starts back on the E. And then when he gets to that B, he starts the pivot lick again. So the whole thing is... So that would be example 2. Now 3 is the most useful, I think, of the whole song, where he kind of does a descending, but he goes down the scale, and when he gets to the B, E, D sharp, C, B, he jumps down to the root. And then pivots, does a pivot, a up pivot. In other words, pivoting from high down to low, from the C sharp to the E, B to the E, A to the E. And then goes back to the pivot lick, pivoting off the B. So here we're pivoting off the E, going back to the E. And then switches it up and pivots off the B. And it's useful knowing how to do it in this off this E as well. Very useful lick when you're even in jazz. When you come to the major 7. So if you're in C, there's the G7 and then the C. I could have set that up better. Maybe playing like a classical sounding lick on the D minor, and then something on the G7 as well, kind of classical sounding. So it fits a little nicer. Anyway, that's probably the highlight of the song in terms of major ideas. But let's see, what else do we got? Oh, the arpeggios. Oh my God. This is why I wanted to highlight just a few things first before I play the whole song and just write it in tab. These arpeggios are crazy. I've been trying to think of cool arpeggios forever. And here comes Bach it beats every arpeggio that I've ever thought of. So it goes to A. So I'm going to leave the key of E, go to the 4 chord. Great arpeggio. And then he goes to the 5 chord, B. And then the 1 chord. And on the 1, he plays kind of a sus4, sus9, or add4, add9 arpeggio. Starts on the B, so, and then goes to the 3rd G. So instead of E to G, we're starting from the 5, goes to the G sharp, and there's the 5, add, sus4, 5, or add 11, and then goes up to the 3, 9, 3, just like in the prelude. So this arpeggio gets 11, A gets the 9, the major 7, and the 6. The B7, similar, gets the 9, flat 7, and 6. And then you could also play the E, like, that's another fingering. And then I extended it diatonically, went to F sharp, to A, B, and then he has another run where he starts on the 3rd of E, G sharp, B, E, D sharp, E, and then a pivot. Very cool. This is pretty cool. He's kind of rotating between the A and the E, you know, just 1/4. A to E. Now on the E, he's starting on the B and playing a little triad. But he does his pivot lick at the bottom off the B. B, he's pivoting off the E, but B, E, A, E, B, E, G sharp, E. Could also do it here, off that little E triad right here. Now we go to A, same kind of thing. Back to E. And then do it off the 5 chord. That's about it. And then there's one final idea that he plays throughout the entire piece. He does it in E, in B7, he does it in A, he does it in minor. That's the most, when you come to this part of the song, that's the most noticeable use of it, but it's actually throughout the entire song. And he does it in E, and all it is he's starting from the root, and it's 3 moves. The first one is just playing the scale downward. E, D sharp, C sharp, B. And then we go back to the E, and this time we're going B, A, G. So it's breaking the scale up into 3 pieces. And you start from the E, then the second part, and then the final phase is back to the E, but now you resolve it with G sharp, F sharp, E. So it's beautiful line. If we did it in A, it's a little easier to see because there's the A, and then it could just go down the, and then he actually does this in B. A, G sharp, F sharp, E, and then A, E, D, C sharp. And then C sharp, B, E. Or you can play it in one position. And sometimes he does it like this. So he doesn't go back to the A the 3rd time. He goes to the E, the 5. And then the ending. which is he uses some drop 2, B7, A. This run, this is what I'm talking about here. There's a double E. E, E. Arpeggio. So that's all just the stuff in E. And then, now, the problem with the stuff that goes into minor, dominant 7, dark dominant 7, HM5 stuff, pull into minor. That stuff is in a weird key. So it's in like D flat. 7 or it's in C sharp 7 pulling to F sharp minor, and then sometimes it goes to C sharp minor, and there's a lot of really cool arpeggio. This is stuff we've got to get to because there's some amazing arpeggio runs. He does all that chromatic stuff, but what I did is wrote it in a different key. So we're actually seeing it in the key of A7 to D minor, G minor, and A7. So it's instead of G sharp 7. So it's a little more relatable. And then if you really want to take it into the weird keys, you can. So I'll do that next, and then attempt to just play the whole piece and put it in tab. It's very playable. It's just so long and there's so many pieces to it, and I don't want to. I want to try to do it without editing, but I'm probably gonna have to just play it in segments because I am just not a classical player, especially not a violin player. I may be asking too much of myself here, but it's a beautiful piece. It's got to be the most melodic at every line, and the way he uses motifs. Unlike where if I sat down and wrote a piece, I'd be playing a lot of arpeggios and looking for cool. Every line is a mirroring of some other line, and it's either root A or root B, and he's doing variations on both, which we'll get to. I didn't really point that out here, but you can kind of see there's a lot of similarity in the lines. These pivot licks, they're very similar. But until you play the piece in order, then you really see the variations. It's got to be his greatest. It's definitely his greatest solo piece. But then the problem is are you saying it's better than the Prelude in G, which I'm playing in D? Yeah, it kind of is. But this is it's kind of like comparing two really great songs, two of the best Beatles songs. Which one is better? I don't know. Anyway, have fun, and we'll be back with some more Bach lessons. So also the idea here, study Bach's lines, and maybe in improv, sneak them in, and kind of, play like Bach a little bit. Instead of just putting him in a museum and saying, oh yeah, Bach was the best, and then go and study in modern play. Bach still is the best and most melodic player of all time. So it's worth studying, just like you study Parker licks. And a lot of one of the most famous bebop-y licks I found in this piece, that would be off of a D flat 7 to resolving to an F sharp minor. And then to that part, but those are all like those Parker lines. Flat 9 into the third of the chord you're going to, but instead he does it just like as a pivot. So in E minor, D7, and then there's your E minor. B7, did I say B? It'd make a great metal, you know. B7, E minor, B7, and this is the long B7 stuff. You know, until he gets back to the E. Some really nice stuff. I'm ahead of myself here, and yeah, we'll see you next time.